really something that we're at a place and time in journey history where we can celebrate Black History Month just by like being together and celebrating together and thinking about the goodness of our God. As we're sitting here talking and thinking together, I've just been thinking about how like music is a part of our individual stories, but it's also a part of our collective story. It's a part of all of us. It's like a thing that connects us across space and time. No matter how old we are, no matter where we grew up, what city we're from, that's something that connects us. But uniquely as Jesus followers, as Christians, music has had this way of shaping how we see ourselves, how we relate to each other, but it's also shaped how we see God and how we view God. You all know what I'm saying? So that's a question that I have for you all. How has music from our Black church experience or from our Black history, how has that shaped how you see yourself and how you see God?
You talked about how big God is, and like that comes out a lot in our music. I think about Donald Lawrence and I Am God all by myself. I don't need any help. I can, there's this thing, kind of a reminder for us to remember He's got it. And, in the back end of that song, and she's like, Jehovah Jireh, our provider. Like this thing that says, I got it. I don't need you to do nothing. Get out of my way. Let me be God. You do you. I'll do me. And I think that's kind of the first thing that pops into my head when I think about that and how it shapes my faith, giving me somebody to lean on and give all of my stuff to.
God as provider. Yeah. That's good.
I think about my walk, and I think about the word perseverance keeps coming into mind. And when, like the Bible says, the race is not given to the swift nor given to the strong, but to the one that endures. And I think about how even just growing up, the songs I sang in my biggest connection with God, even before I knew how to really communicate with God, was through songs that embodied like, okay, God, we're getting through this. Like, you got me, God. Like, I think even just me now as a person, I see myself as someone who perseveres. And I think that is because of that truth and knowing that, God keeps me through everything and witnessing the ways that He's kept me and thinking back on things that I should have, I don't know how I've gotten through. And just, staying faith, like for God staying faithful and keeping the faith and just always reminding myself of how He's pulled me through, and through song that has helped me to really believe that and experience that.
That's good.
That's so true. And you just talking about it made me think about, I don't know if anybody else got this. I guess it's because I'm relatively young at this point. But singing a lot of gospel songs, people would always say, like, you don't know anything about that yet. But just wait until you understand. And so I would see my grandma like sit in like the first pew of the church, and like you would see her singing these songs, and it would sound kind of sorrowful, but she's smiling while she's singing them. And now that I'm a little bit older than when they were telling me that, at least, I definitely can just better understand how she finds the joy in those things that seem like a lot more sorrowful, and just finding that connection with God. So that's one thing that I've learned, even in the way that we worship with each other. It's so relational with each other as well as with God. And so it's just been a way to find joy, even in those moments that are really hard and that you have to persevere.
I was going to say something a little similar to that. Like, I think when we have such deep history with each other, you mentioned collective, and then I think about how when we can all come together and know a song, and it's just so funny and hilarious because we all in different churches and know the same, like, I gotta praise, and I gotta get it out, like small stuff, and then you got the hand clap, and then we all come together and we just cracking up because it made us feel good, like we were comfortable and we felt connected because some of the churches kind of do the same thing. So like I think it's really fun to be able to come together and like we can all sing the oh, and then you got that hand, and so I think that automatically puts us together when you said relational. Like, it is a thing where you like, you feel more connected because of what the church put together, you know. And then you know that y'all share similar like mourning at times, or similar like joy, grief, like you kind of feel connected all from the songs that you choose to sing. And so it's pretty cool to have that in church in general.
It's cool because like what you said is true. Like we've all gone through struggle, you know, and a lot of like in the history of the Black church and Black music, it was born out of that struggle, that, you know, that I got a feeling everything is gonna be all right. Or I feel like going on. All of that was like deep, like stuff. And so we can be in the Atlantas and the Chicagos and the St. Louis, whatever. But when we can come together in this space, we go, oh yeah, I know that one, you know, because we've all, you know, experienced some of that stuff. And I think that's even what we've experienced in this space already. Just this common ground that we all kind of share, and the beauty of that.
Yeah, it makes me want to ask a little further, like, what other characteristics of God stand out to you that surface in the music of our history and the Black church experience? We talked about the fact that he is sustaining, and that he provides, and that he is present. What other characteristics of God stand out?
I would say, like the big word that comes to mind is God is faithful.
Yes.
You know, I was listening to some old songs today, older songs, and it was a Donnie McClurkin song, I Call You Holy. But then he was like, you know, I call you faithful, your name is faithful. And in a lot of songs, like we'll just take that word and just drive it home.
Yes.
Like he's faithful, you know, or he's able. And he just talks about the consistency of God and like his ability to meet us where we're at, and even when we're inconsistent, even when we got things going on in our lives, like God is always faithful. And so that's like just a word or attribute that comes to my mind, like when we talking about God.
You know what's funny about that? Like we talk about like how big God is and how, you know, I think it's still relatively recent for like a song, even though that song is older now, Friend of God.
Right.
Like when that came out, everybody was like, wait, he what? No, God is big. God is way up here and I'm little and he big, you know, and the concept of like him also being near has been something I still feel, especially in Black music and in Black church, we're still trying to wrap our brains around the fact that he's this, but he's also right here and here, you know, and that's just the thing that I still feel like we're trying to learn. You know, just on a regular basis, that he's
Those two things feel almost in competition.
Yeah, they fight each other, but they're still
But they're not,
together at the same time.
Yeah, I think of one word I think of is sovereign God. Because I remember this, I grew up in church since like I was a baby. And a lot of the songs I sang before I really even understood the gospel and started to dive into the word. But I look at how those songs got me through when I really didn't understand quite everything about God, and how now I see it, and I see how God has worked through these songwriters, God has worked through people who wrote these songs, and they are the gospel. They're a part of the gospel, and they speak to getting me through those times where I didn't quite understand, and I was still able to get to this point, and my faith has grown. So I think of God being sovereign, how he answered the unknowns, even with music, even just singing and playing. So I can fully understand.
Like it was in you, and you didn't even know it was in you, from the repetition and from just the repeated choruses that come to mind in those moments of struggle. That's good.
And even the way that they follow you home. Like, to just hear your parents, like, singing, and then you're like, there's no music playing. They just honestly got a song in their heart, and it comes through.
I think it's interesting, too, how when we sing those songs and then we read the Bible, like, finally you pick the Bible up, and then you're like, I know this verse because I sang it. I'm like, I didn't even know this out of scripture. I'm like, this is nice. So then you feel like a Bible scholar, but you really weren't reading it.
That's good.
That, for me, that's because gospel music has always, been a bridge to the revelation of who God is. You know, and through that, I know He is the greatest friend to the suffering. You know, and gospel music just continues to be that bridge that reveals, you know, that helps me to see how great Thou art, who He really is. And so that bridge, I got to walk forward and backwards and stand on it for a while and all of that while worshiping and just receiving the revelation of who He is.
Amen. Amen.
The blood that Jesus